Hey, it's John Foss. I'm talking to the one, the only Mike Rowe. Mike, thanks so much for being back with us. And we're talking about 6 Degrees with Mike Rowe, the new show available right now on Discovery Plus. Tell us about the show.
Well, it's a history show for people who normally would never watch a history show. It's if you know the old parlor game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, where it's that, except I travel through time on a budget, trying to connect two seemingly disparate points with a little bit of production help from puppets, animation, my old high school acting buddy, a team of community theater players, some suspicious wigs, dubious costumes, special effects. And it's just kind of a fun, hot mess of a thing we did during COVID. And what came out the other end was a surprisingly fun romp through our history, and hopefully proof that we're a little bit more connected than the headlines today might lead us to believe.
And you've gone from home shopping, dirty jobs, and nobody ever told us that you were also an amazing writer and this huge history buff. How did this happen?
I don't know. I think I might have a knack for stealing ideas from other people. This show used to be called Connections, and it was on in the late 70s, and it was hosted by a terrific, brilliant mind, a guy named James Burke. And ever since, I just thought if I could find a way to do my version of that show, it would be fun. I mean, to answer your question, Dirty Jobs was a tribute to my grandfather and really a rumination on work. This is a tribute to my dad, who was a history teacher, taught high school history for years. And he always used to say to me, my job as a teacher is to make history as interesting as possible for kids who just really couldn't care less. The truth is, it's the same thing in TV. History is a tough sell. And if you can get it to a place that becomes truly relatable for virtually anyone, then you might have something new. And that was the trick too with Dirty Jobs. We wanted to bring people with us for the ride. And it's the same thing here. This is the making of a history show. It's also a history show, but it's also the kind of history show you would make during COVID when you don't have any choice but to make it up as you go.
That's a good point. And you mentioned Chuck. Tell us about your friend Chuck.
Well, he's an idiot. I love him. I've known him all my life. We went to high school together. He's actually a very talented actor. And he and I started our careers and went in different directions. And I wound up in the nonfiction world. And he wound up doing movies and soap operas and sitcoms and everything else. And so we've always stayed in touch. And now he works for my foundation. And we were just sitting around a couple years ago. Honestly, he was just looking for work. And I'm like, look, all right, I'll do a show and you can play like 35 or 40 different characters. So that's what we did. Oh my God, it was so much fun making this thing. And yeah, it's a kick now to see it all come together.
Yeah, and I think that is the dream, is to work with somebody that you grew up with, somebody that you're friends with, and to be at a point in your career where you can do a show like this for fun. And switching gears a little bit, I wanted to mention in the past conversations we've had, you have mentioned your disdain for cancel culture. And at that point, I don't think anybody foresaw what we're seeing today. I mean, we recently had the former president of the United States banned from pretty much all mainstream social media. And not only him, but basically anybody with a following that said a good thing about him, which is crazy. And who knows where it's going to go from here. What do you think about this current state of affairs that we find ourselves in right now?
Nothing has changed at all, except for the fact that we threw a lot of gas on a fire. I mean, 4 years ago, I started writing about this because I had one really weird week. I was raising money for my foundation. And in the course of doing that, I appeared on Bill Maher's show, Real Time. And then the next day, I appeared on Glenn Beck's show over on The Blaze. And, I had about 5 million people on my Facebook page back then, and their heads just exploded. Not because they disagreed with it. It was amazing. I mean, like on the one hand, everybody loved what I was doing. Everybody supported the effort to raise money to close the skills gap, scholarships, and so forth. But suddenly I was seen too close. I was simply sitting too close to the wrong guy for a lot of people on the right. And then the next day I was sitting too close to the wrong guy for a lot of people on the left. And watching the two of them come together and eat each other's tails was and mine, by the way, was very instructive. And obviously what's happening now in our country is that same thing. We've just been put very, very specifically into two different boxes. And it's like a time of choosing, right? You must choose right now. And if you don't choose, well, silence is violence or some such nonsense. And so at a time when we ought to be talking to each other really candidly and respectfully, we're being forbidden from talking to each other. And yeah, that scares me.
And speaking of putting fuel on the fire, I saw a recent Rasmussen poll that said 47% of the country believed that the recent presidential election was rigged.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on that? Do you think it was rigged?
Well, I'll tell you what, I read this morning a poll that said 91% of people who voted for Trump would vote for Trump again right now. So what I would say is, look, there's this idea floating around that when Trump leaves office, we're all going to come together and sing Kumbaya. That's not going to happen. The morning after he leaves, half the country is going to wake up still convinced that we are systemically racist. And the other half is going to wake up convinced that we're no longer capable of holding a free and fair election. And that is bad. And, I don't really have a firm opinion on what to say about a private company like Facebook or Twitter deciding to ban certain people. But I will say this, when you do that, if you're a person who's already somewhat suspicious of what's going on in the country, and all of a sudden you can't talk to your friends the way it's a bad look. So I think we have a lot of work to do. I don't know what happened with the election, but it doesn't matter what I know. What matters is what I believe. And what matters is what millions of other people believe. Because being right about something and thinking you're right about something, what's the difference?
Exactly. All right. Well, Mike Rowe, thanks so much. In Twin Cities, make sure you check out 6 Degrees with Mike Rowe, available right now on Discovery Plus. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.